Meet the unicorn of entrepreneurship. And no, I'm not talking about venture-backed startups like Stripe or Notion. I'm talking about a lifestyle business. A lifestyle business that started as a blog on gardening. Yep, you heard that right. Kevin Espiritu is the founder of Epic Gardening, a media platform and e-commerce company that does $40 million in sales.
I care way less about earning now than I did before, because my personal utility of money, it's now a game. I don't personally feel like I need to make some crazy sum.
But a lifestyle business isn't all fun and games. You're constantly putting out fires, which means you don't have time freedom, and you're always thinking about work.
I think every founder would be lying if they said, I literally never thought, what if I wasn't doing this? Pretty sure every founder has thought that, and some of them are like too hardcore to admit it.
In this video, Kevin will describe the strategies he used to grow his business, how his obsession fuels entrepreneurship, and despite all of his success, how he still struggles with the question, what's enough money? By the way, if you're a driven executive or entrepreneur, you've probably struggled with this question of when to go harder on your business and when to step back and harvest the gains. If that's you and you're thinking of making a bold career pivot, we have a group coaching program for you at radreads.co/coaching. Now here's my conversation with Kevin Espiritu.
So take us back. What was the first entrepreneurial venture you remember, even if it involved like pennies on the dollar?
So I think I have a pretty classic story there with a lot of these hustler types, where I don't know if I did the lemonade stand thing, but right around the time middle school was happening for me, 6th grade is when Napster came out.
Okay.
If you remember Napster,
You're dating yourself, but
yeah,
I do.
I know the first real peer-to-peer thing. So it comes out and we're like, oh wow, like you don't have to go to the store to buy the CDs anymore. And so I got pretty familiar with Napster and was starting to burn custom CDs for my friends. So I'd say like, give me 12 tracks, whatever fits on the CD-ROM, and I'll burn you a custom track. I think I probably charged $5, $10.
Nice.
And that was my first little taste. I did the buy candy at Costco, sell it to your friends sort of thing. All those kind of like classic middle school, high school hustles, at least of our era. I think probably these days kids are like, I'm actually a venture-backed AI startup. It's in 6th grade, but back then it was a little more analog.
Yeah. Did your parents' influence have anything to do with this entrepreneurial mindset?
Not really. My mom is pretty conservative. She's pretty risk averse in a responsible way. And my dad was doing some stuff around that time. He was a big fisherman. And so what he would do is collect old school reels off of eBay. And he would then either buy them at a discount and just fish with them, or he'd like buy and resell if he sort of sniped the deal. So I think he was doing a little bit of eBay fishing reselling, but it wasn't like in a way where I was inspired by that. I just kind of was like, oh, what's that up to?
And socioeconomically, what were you guys? How would you describe yourselves?
When I think about it, I guess I didn't realize this for a long time. We were not like poor by any means of the imagination. We lived in San Diego. We got a good deal on a single family home back in the day when they weren't like a crazy amount of money, but we were always a roughly single income household because my mom, after she had my brother, who's younger than me, she got ill with chronic fatigue syndrome, which had a different name back at the time. It's an autoimmune disorder. She couldn't work. And so we were off my dad's salary at the time, he was a water treatment plant superintendent. And so he was like managing this water treatment plant. I don't think he made a ton. Like, I don't think he even made 6 figures, which obviously inflation, it probably was 6 figures equivalent back then. But yeah, and then when he passed away when I was 13, then we really didn't have any income at all, except for, some things that we had to like sue the hospital to try to figure out what was going on. And it was an accidental death sort of situation. But without that, frankly, which is kind of crazy to say, like, I don't really know what we would have done, because my mom couldn't work and I was the oldest and I was 13 and my dad's gone. So I'm like, man, it would have been crazy if things didn't shake out a different way.
And did you, first, I'm so sorry to hear, I know, but like that loss at that age of a father figure, like, how did that impact you as the eldest boy? Like, do you remember like giving yourself marching orders, or like, how did you think of yourself as the father, like the primary male in the household, or did you even?
It's kind of weird because so many of those memories are kind of fuzzy, and what was thought of at that time what did I think about myself? I remember thinking like, are we going to have to leave our home? Like, how are we going to pay for the house? But my mom, being as frugal as she is, had paid off the house in 12 years on a 30-year mortgage, I think, like a couple months before my dad passed away. And so in that sense, like, very fortunate that my mom, despite not being able to work, was like such a numbers wizard and so like sort of conservative in that regard. But I do remember, I forgot who told it to me, but sometime at the funeral or afterwards, someone told me, like, you're the man of the house now, of the family. And I didn't think about it until someone said that. And I was like, well, I guess they're right. Like, there is no other man and I'm the oldest one. So that means I'm the man of the house. I didn't really know at 13, like, what am I supposed to do with that information? You know? But I think I did to some degree internalize that, like, there wasn't someone above me telling me what to do anymore in a masculine way, right? Like, there's no dad anymore telling you what to do, and there's no other father figure I personally felt like I had. And so to me, I was like, I guess I'm the oldest person that I can trust on certain things in life, you know? And so I turned to actually the internet to like learn a lot of stuff because I had no one to ask this stuff, you know? So I think that's kind of where I was always into the internet as a kid, but I think that's kind of where my like obsession with understanding like internet culture and making content, making websites and stuff began.
I think that's one of the things, like, we didn't explicitly talk about this on the retreat, but it definitely comes out in like things like the Kendrick Drake thing, is like, we both love internet culture.
Yeah.
And how old are you?
I'm 36.
You're 36. So we're eight, 9 years apart. So generationally close, but still with some separation. But yeah, I could see that, like, that entrepreneurial knack. Did any of that interest, like I need to get smart on this? How much of that landed on things in the realm of like business and money?
Not a lot when I was younger, really, not a lot. I remember like downloading Dreamweaver on some sort of hack, probably Napster, honestly.
You're like taking me down memory lane,
you know? So I was
set up like CompuServe next or Prodigy or something.
That one, that's a little too old. That one you got me on. But either way, we're dating ourselves for sure. But yeah, I would like download Dreamweaver and try to code up websites. I learned HTML and CSS, of course. Around the MySpace era, everyone's learning a bit of HTML, a bit of CSS. I was doing a lot of like I guess early blogging, I guess. My cousin and I had a site called howtodrawanime.geocities.com or something. And we didn't even know how to draw anime. We just were like learning to draw anime. We'd scan the pieces of art that we'd do and we'd like put them up on the blog and be like, how to draw anime eyes. And then we'd show you how to do it. Meanwhile, we had like literally just learned 10 minutes ago. So it's like, what tutorial are we really offering? But it was just early practice, I guess, at making something on the internet. But there was no purpose of trying to make money. Actually, you know what? Now that we're talking about it, dude, it reminds me of the era of like weird make money online scams that like people older than us at the time would have propagated. Like, I remember there was a bunch where you'd have to like click on a bunch of different things and they'd pay you like 5 cents a click or something.
Oh yeah.
And you know, some guy who's like probably 25 at the time, I'm 15, he's like farming my clicks for some crazy ad arbitrage or something. But I remember trying to get into that kind of thing just because I was fascinated by like how that could work.
Yeah, that's fun. I remember there was this, I think it was called like Ad Advantage. It's probably predates you. But if you like basically run a cookie and like a permanent banner, it would pay you like $1 an hour.
Yes.
And so I was like, yes, free money. And like in hindsight, I'm like, wow, like what were they? That was like pre-Facebook mining of attention.
Oh my God. Yeah, I remember that. There were all these different things you could install that would just like spam the hell out of you. But they'd pay you like 10 cents an hour or something. So
yeah, that's funny. And so in that time, you know, did you like leading up to college, like what was your relationship to money?
I didn't have a ton, I don't think. I want to say by the time I got to 18, I think I had under $2,000 total, like to my name, you know? Yep. And I remember that because somewhere around then is when Google IPO'd. Whenever Google IPO'd, I remember I had $1,600 to my name.
Or something, or a 3?
Yeah, something like that. I had $1,600. That's all I had. And it was from like little odd jobs and like some allowance and stuff. And I said to my mom, I was like, Mom, can I like buy Google stock with this? I just want to put all my money in Google. And she's like, absolutely not. Like that's, you can't do that. And now, of course, I always like, I'm like, Mom, like, come on, Google. Like, can you imagine? But no, I didn't have a ton. I remember that when I turned 18, like actually a couple days before, I put $100 onto an online poker website. And that's when I kind of started playing the online poker angle. But I didn't have a ton of money. The thing that did happen when I was younger is because of what happened to my dad, we had to like go through a couple lawsuits to figure out like what happened. He like passed out in a pool and no one was there to kind of take care of him and make sure he was okay. And that kind of contributed to his death. And so we did have some money from like the settlement of those lawsuits, but I didn't really feel that it was my own. Even though it was coming to me, I was like, this isn't really, it felt like some sort of weird surrogate for the death of your father. I was like, I don't like the feeling of accepting it, but it is coming in, you know? So I knew that was like going to start happening, but I didn't want to have to rely on it, I guess.
Got it. And so you're playing online poker, and what's kind of salient from that period of your life, the online poker, that kind of contributes to the entrepreneurship story?
I think it's the raw level of obsession that I had with it. Like I was completely obsessed with online poker. I mean, I read book after book after book. I was in this poker forum called 2+2. I found my way to an IRC chat, which is kind of
like the Phil Ivey days? Like when it's like the early World Series of Poker days?
Yeah, Phil
on
Ivey
ESPN.
Was huge back then. I mean, that's when everyone was watching poker on TV.
Yeah,
you know?
Me too. Yeah, I suck at poker.
And so I think it was the combination of, you can earn money doing this, which was to me, proxy for freedom. Like I can earn resources from this. It's a game. I love games. I love video games. I love games in general. And there was like an element of math. There's an element of like intuition to it. So it's like this perfect combo, at least for my brain and a lot of others who played it, that it was easy to get addicted to. And that taught me like, hey, if I get addicted to this or obsessed with it and I focus on how to get better, I can see myself actually get better. And so I saw sort of like the cultivation of a skill. And then that taught me a lot about business after that.
Did you, so you said you paid for college using your poker winnings?
Yeah, I made enough in college that theoretically I would have paid for it with the how does the money get counted with some of that stuff that was coming in versus the poker? But I made like 200 to 250K during college playing poker.
Wow.
And so that was like my way of sort of earning the right to kind of accept that money. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow. And so you graduate with 250K in your bank account.
Less because I spent it on college, but yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. So you spent it on college, and then you said you're like, I don't want to get a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, walk us through that moment of like you walk in graduation, everyone's like, I'm going to go work at Oracle. I'm going to go work at, Deloitte. And you're like, I'm not going to get a job.
Yeah. So I came out with a business economics accounting degree, and I went to University of California, Santa Barbara, which is like pretty well known actually for the economics department and specifically for accounting. It's like the school to go to apparently for accounting. And so a lot of my friends were in accounting, and I was watching them tee up their like CPA exams, tee up their summer internships, and like seeing just the work they were putting in on summer internships, knowing the starting salary after that of going to a big four, like a Deloitte. And I was like, it's like 55, 60K to work 80 hours a week, sleep in the office literally sometimes. And for what? Like for accounting? Like I'm not interested in I'm not like dying to serve accounting providers. You know what I mean? And so to me, I was like, well, look, I'm making more than that playing poker. I'll just play poker until I figure out what I want to do after college. Because I know for a fact, it's not just to become an accountant, just for me.
Yeah.
And so that was my logic on not getting the job. And frankly, like, I think I should have gotten a job, but probably not accounting.
Got it. Is poker one of these things where there's some, like if you reach a certain level, you have some kind of band of predictability of your winnings where you could be like, I think I could reliably make 20K every 3 months? Or is it like you make 100K one month, you lose 50K the next month? The way you played it.
The way I played it, I played for predictability. So I have friends who played, they would basically play pure probability theory. They'd say like, if I have an edge, I'll play the game regardless of the variance or the swings of that particular game. So I have friends who would play $40,000 a hand buy-ins, and they play a really bad player or someone they had an edge on, and that person would just destroy them just because of the variance of the game, right? So they'd be out like 200K on a particular day, and they're like, oh my God, like this month is terrible. And meanwhile, I played way lower stakes than that, way more tables, so way more hands, which is just a larger sample size. So everything smooths out. And I eked out basically like a 55, 53% edge on those hands, right? Versus someone else who's like destroying a really bad player or getting destroyed. And so, yeah, I had a pretty predictable salary, so to speak, for poker.
We're similar in that way. And like, I've always viewed myself as like, I'd rather take the lower return with the lower volatility, but just do it over a longer period of time where just compound those wins. Just give us a perspective, because people are listening and you're super fucking motivating and inspiring. Give us a perspective of like, to be obsessed at poker. Can you frame what that means in terms of a time commitment between like the playing, the reading, the learning, how many hours a week, a day are we talking?
Well, mentally, it's there is not an hour you wouldn't be thinking about it.
Okay, so it's like an entrepreneur. You're thinking about it.
Yeah, mentally, the mental state I can remember myself being in back in the day is I was never not thinking about it to some degree.
Okay.
It might even have been like, I don't know, I'm sitting in a class, I'm bored, and I started looking at the people in the crowd, and somehow that sparked a thought that then made me think about another it's when you're that into it. I remember when I was skateboarding as a kid, like everywhere my mom would drive me, I would just be looking out the window going like, that's a 4-star, I could probably kickflip that, that's like a little, so the lens, it's the rose tinted glass that you look at the whole world through. But like in a practical sense, I remember I'd go out to lunch, I'd take like a notebook and I'd write out probability math on different types of hands, or I'd figure out like what's called combinatorics, or the hand I have is, I know the 2 cards I have, right? When I'm playing Texas Hold'em, I'm playing against you, let's say. I don't know the 2 cards you have, but I do know the flop, right? The 3 cards. I'll know the turn and the river. And so you can actually run a perfect prediction on what I have versus your range of hands. So I don't know what you have, but I know in this position, based on who Khe is, how he plays, what reasonable people would do in this position, what unreasonable people would do, I could say I can narrow the range of total hands you might have to this. And how do I do against that range of hands? And so I might be like dominated, let's say, by your range, but I might then have a crazy tell where I'm like, actually, when Khe like takes way too long to think, he's fake acting like he's weak and he's actually strong. And he does that every time. And I figured that out. And so I might be able to say like, well, I'm weak probability wise against Khe's range in this position on the poker table, but I have this weird, crazy tell where I know he's always faking it when he does this, so I'm going to go anyways, right?
Wow.
And so you're playing like a math angle.
This in your head.
Yeah, you're playing it in your head, but you have the math stuff you have to like get in your head somehow. So you have to study that, and then the rest of it's based on feel,
on experience. Got it. So you're thinking about it all the time in terms of like hours spent on poker, like in poker, and like actually doing stuff, reading, doing these math probabilities. Like, could you have like a rough estimate of like an average week?
I think if I wasn't in class or hanging out with friends, I was doing something that had to do with poker.
Okay.
Back in the day.
Were you partying much, or like?
I partied a bit. I mean, I went to SB, which was a party school, but I didn't really enjoy it that much, which is kind of weird. Like when you're playing a game like poker and you kind of can know your hourly rate, like you mentioned, you're sitting there like, well, I could go make $1,000 an hour, or I could go out with my friends and party tonight and probably have a great time. And I'm like, which one's worth more? You know what I mean? And it's not a type of calculus like you'd ever expect to run into in college. It's kind of like an awkward thing to think about,
Yeah. Wow. Now, did poker phase out? Like what prompted the transition to the next phase?
Yeah, I cold turkey quit poker and have basically never played again since. And that would have been like, I think it was April 27th, 2010.
So not a significant date in your life.
No, yeah. Well, I just remember, here's why I remember. That would have been about 6 months after graduating. So it's roughly at the point where it's like, are you just going to play poker with your life, or are you like doing something, And I was trying to do things, like I was studying for the real estate exam. I spent a whole month learning to drum. I spent a whole month learning to draw like the human figure, like anatomically. And I was studying for the real estate exam. So I was like, you know what? Let me just fire up a tournament. Normally I played cash games. So I was like, let's fire up a tournament. I'll study for the real estate exam on this screen. I'll play the tournament on this screen. And so I'm studying for the real estate exam. I'm playing this tournament, and I'm like, wow, I'm actually doing pretty well in this tournament. I don't play tournaments that well. It's a lot of luck in tournaments. I win the tournament, and it was like $5,000, I think. And I go, you know what? I don't want to be a realtor. What am I studying for this stupid real estate exam for? So I was like, I also don't want to be a poker player. Like, I see the guys who are 26, 27, 28 that are playing poker. They basically look like me still. I don't want that to be me when I'm like 26, 27, 28. So I go, I'm just going to quit both of these right now. I'm not going to be a realtor, and I'm quitting poker today. So I quit. I like withdrew all my money. I uninstalled the accounts. I actually went to like the grocery store and I bought like a cheesecake because it's my favorite dessert. And I like celebrated by eating an entire cheesecake. And I never played poker since. So that was my day of quitting.
And why couldn't you have like weaned off? Like, why did it have to be cold turkey in your mind?
I think because I was that obsessed with it that I couldn't do it at a small rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that, would you say like that obsession defines you as a person?
I would
like
say
obsessive nature.
Less today than ever before. But yeah, in general, like I prefer to really get into things and like figure out all the machinations of how they work.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's generally speaking, I think that's part of my personality.
Do you think that's a strength or a weakness?
Yeah, it's both, right? Like it allows you the ability to like, I don't know, figure out how to make YouTube videos or figure out how to make short form TikToks or something. But then it also prevents you from just like chilling, right? And truly relaxing, which is like, I'm literally like learning how to properly relax, as we learned in the retreat we went to, man.
You and me both, man. I watched TV on a weekday, like for the first time ever at
Crazy.
44 years old. And I like, without the guilt.
Yeah.
But oh dude, we're similar in that way. All right. So tell us about the lifestyle part of Epic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The phase of Epic that was lifestyle. So when I quit Scribe Media, it was 2016, and the blog.
How old were you?
I would have been 8 years younger than now. So probably 26, 27 or no, 20. Yeah. 27, 28.
You have like a little bit of savings from poker and from working.
Yeah. But honestly, when I came out of college, I had like triple the amount of money that I had when I quit Scribe. Cause I was like trying a lot of businesses and just not doing that well. I was doing enough to kind of like tread water basically. And then I would like draw my savings down for a trip or something. So by the time I was 27, I had like a third as much money as I had when I was 22. That didn't feel great, I would say. So I quit. I go full time on the blog, and the blog's making like $400 a month. So it's not even at lifestyle level, right? It's like hobbyist income or something.
And just write. You love writing about gardening.
I love to write about gardening. I love to build the website. I love to like figure out how to increase the traffic, like the whole thing. Like I love the whole game of it all. And then the craft of gardening was my vehicle because I love gardening, right? And so,
do you think you could have done that for like poker? Like, could you have done that for anything you were interested in? Like,
no,
forget like whether the market could support it. It had to be gardening.
If I was interested in it, yes. If I'm not interested in it, no. I don't think I'm the type of builder who can be like, I sense a gap in carpentry and I'm going to go dedicate my life. Because if I don't care about carpentry, I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's a blessing and a curse. It allows you the ability to like run full steam ahead on things other people are like, why is this guy so obsessed with this, right? But if the flip side is if you're not obsessed, you can't get someone to even take a single step, right? So that's the curse, I guess. But anyway, so I leave. I go, you know what? The blog's making $400 a month. There's like a nascent YouTube channel. Doesn't really make anything, but I at least have it. Let me see if I can get this to that $2,200 a month, like I told you.
So it was like a real number in your head that's like, once I like kind of not like fire, but like, I'm good number.
Yeah. And it was very naive. It was like, well, that's $2,200 a month gross revenue from a business that you're going to have to pay taxes on and like so on and so forth. Like it really needed to be the 5K to even basically maybe tread water. Right. But regardless, that was what I tried to do. So my mind was like, if I can get it to make $75,000 a year as a business, then I'll be fine because I won't be forced by reality to do something else.
Do anything.
You can't make me do something if I'm making, my number at the time, 75. And so that was a goal. It was like, how can I get it there? And then it was just a very systematic process of like, okay, well, where's that $450 a month coming in from right now? Okay, what's coming in from the blog? Okay, what part of the blog? Okay, there's this one article that's doing really well. Okay, can I write more articles like that? Very, very much like a surgical approach. And then as that sort of stabilized, you hire a team to help you run that particular piece. And then I moved to YouTube and tried to figure that out. And then that makes ad revenue, right? And you start to slowly see how these pieces can build up.
Yeah. Wow. So it's not dissimilar from how you approach poker. Like there was a game and you saw the kind of seams in the game.
Mm-hmm.
You cared about the overall game, gardening in this case, and you just kind of chipped away at the different levers. And like, is it fair to say that you get like a deep sense of satisfaction from like figuring out how the game works itself, in addition to like writing about gardening?
Yeah. I mean, I think if we get to the like core of why I get excited about stuff like that is because I like to understand in general. So like, I like to understand how things work and why they work, and then the principles underneath that. So like, I really in like 2014, 2015, a little bit before getting into Epic full time, I was at Scribe Media and I got really influenced by a couple friends on the internet. This guy, Eric Jorgensen, he was writing, him, he was writing this thing called Evergreen Library at the time, which was basically like an early version of, I think what Farnham Street is another one that is all about these mental models.
He wrote
a
lot about personal leverage, right? Because him and
personal
I were
leverage,
were in that leverage area of productivity. Yeah. This was 2016. Yeah, it was like right when I was writing about like productivity and leverage. Yeah, same era.
Yeah, there's an era, and I've seen it now because 8 years have played out, of people writing about those sorts of ideas, or at the very least consuming them. Like I had a blog. I think you'd probably still see I have some mental model articles up on my own blog from that time. But once I started to understand, oh my God, like there's actually sort of like underlying principles of the fabric of reality, basically, of how it works, right? How the whole universe basically works, which sounds kind of like esoteric and spiritual almost, but I actually don't think it is. I think if you think about, Pareto principle or just the principles of leverage, you see it play out over and over and over again in every different field in the world, and even in natural systems, which is why I like gardening so much, right? Like you can see these exact same principles play out in an ecosystem. And so I'm like, oh my God, like I feel like I'm seeing the matrix. Like I feel like I can see how all this stuff ties together. So if I can do that, then I should be able to like apply it to a thing I want to work. And then I should be able to make that thing work.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You would be a phenomenal investor, like public markets investor, because that's investing at like pretty high stakes with I always thought that it was, a lot of people that were in investing end up in ad tech because it's like very similar DNA, right? There's a lot of data. You're like trying to model human behavior against incentives. You're looking for like very quick mispricings to like arbitrage them out. And so it's not that dissimilar. And I can really relate to that. I mean, I've shared, for me, like my internet career has been my second career. So I'm less motivated by money. Mm-hmm. But what I love about the internet career is that it gives me this canvas to like go play with all these different levers. Like you and I were just talking about, like, I have like a TikTok that's like, blowing up in like my sense. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, I figured out this seam right there. And like, I could just keep like pulling on that thread and something's going to happen. I don't know what it is, but there's like a deep satisfaction of like, oh, I cracked this little part of the TikTok algorithm. And like, if I was motivated by money, I would like try to like spin up a product. But now I'm just like, oh, like, let's see where this goes. And I think that this is what I share with people. And you're putting it in like for me, they see it in like a hobbyist lens, but you're showing it as you're going to continue to tell your story, like in a true business sense, where if you have a canvas big enough where there's all these seams of like problems to solve and ways to be creative and ways to make money and ways to market and sell, like it's a phenomenal ecosystem to play with. And if you have that obsessive personality, like that games playing mindset, it's like a fucking amazing canvas.
Yeah. I think the people who get it are the smartest people in the world. I think once you understand what the internet actually is, you understand like the true power that it holds. It's crazy. I mean, I've said before, to my team when we make our YouTube videos. Sometimes, you're under the gun, you're trying to get a video out or whatever. And I go, look, do we want this video to do well? Yeah, we do. We want it to get seen, we think this is a 1 million view banger, whatever, right? So I go, cool. So if we want this to do well, I'm in the video, Jacques on our team's in the video, you're filming the video. The thing we do right now in this hour is basically frozen in time forever. You can't re-edit the YouTube video once it's up. And then mirror images of us in our work today is distributed until the ends of time, until the data centers shut off, right? So like, you better get it right now, because there's clones of me being consumed as you and I even talk, right? I mean, there's like, just at the scale of Epic now, there's probably like hundreds of people watching some version of me say something at some point in time in the past, right?
And studying it.
And studying it, right? Like they're learning from it. And so am I communicating, am I in a good mood that day that I film? Or am I like am I saying something that's actually factual and correct, right? Like, am I doing my research? And so when you realize that, and it's the same with like people who built a Twitter audience or have built these other audiences, what you're doing is you're spitting sort of value, your perspective into the void of the internet. And then on the other side of it, these platforms are sort of incentivized to put your value in front of the people who would find it most valuable, right? And then what happens from that? Well, a relationship develops and there's some sort of exchange of value at some point in time. And so that's really kind of what's happening. It's just a scaled way to relate to people.
Yeah.
And the best to do it will reap the most.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you saying something like, you went on Good Morning America and then you went on Sam Parr's My First Million, and like you understand, you can like see, because of where you sit, you can see the result, the impact. And what was the difference between going on a podcast that probably half of our listeners haven't heard of it? It's big in our circles, the My First Million podcast, but like, what was the difference in reach between Good Morning America and My First Million?
Yeah, I went on I think it was the Today Show with Hoda and Jenna three times during the pandemic. And the first time was actually from TikTok. So it's the whole point I just mentioned, dude, was we put a bunch of TikTok, I made a bunch of TikToks. Those TikToks got picked up by a producer there. Hey, do you want to come on the show? Like, boom, that's how the internet works, right?
Yeah.
But then we go on the show, and I'm not trashing it at all. It was an amazing experience. I got some texts from people I hadn't heard of in a long time. They're like, for someone who's a nurse now working at the clinic and they see you on TV, they text you. But it was more like a that's cool type thing, right? And there's no interactivity between the consumer of the television and the media they're consuming. They can't then reshare it. They can't do anything. It's just passive, one to many, versus like when Sam and Sean covered me, I had no idea they were going to do that. And so when I woke up that morning, it had gone live, and I had like 10 texts, 3 DMs, 2 LinkedIns, 6 emails, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And obviously my circle is one that was more likely to listen to My First Million.
Yeah.
But the viewership of today's show is obviously like maybe 100 times bigger, if not more. Right. And so you can see the sort of scale differential. And then not only that, like these are people who reach directly to me because they heard it.
Yeah.
Unlike the television. And these are people more in my circle, like maybe someone's a potential partner, potential manufacturer, who knows? And so, yeah, it was just a crazy difference.
That's wild. So take us to the end of the lifestyle. So you're building out this blog, YouTube channel. Like, what's the end point? When does it stop being a lifestyle business, and describe what it looks like at that point?
I think it stopped being a lifestyle business before I realized it stopped. So what happened was in 2019, I started offering products to the audience directly because frankly—
So 3 years later.
Yeah, 3 years later after quitting the job, I was like, you know what? These brands want to pay you. What do they want to pay you for? Your audience. Well, you have access to your audience, and theoretically your incentives are better aligned with your audience if you're offering something directly to them versus using them as an advertising source, right? Not to say that's not a good thing to do. We sometimes do sponsored content, but it's like, we don't make it our whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I started offering product to the audience, and it just went really well. It was 2019, right before the pandemic. And then when the pandemic happened, it really started to go well. And so I don't know I'm actually curious, like, do you have an income level you define a lifestyle business as?
I don't know if there is one, but I would say a lifestyle business stops being a lifestyle business when your lifestyle starts to suffer from it.
Yeah, that's a good answer. That's a good answer.
So that could be like, and so like, was your business, and then obviously like you love to garden, you love to make YouTube videos. But if you're like not being present with your girlfriend at dinner, or you're like, you haven't seen your friends in 6 months because you're making YouTube videos. So like that's, to me,
You know, in that sense, maybe it never was a lifestyle business. No, but like, in 2020, 2021, the revenue of the company really grew, but the team did not grow. By the time we got to 2021, I think we did around 7.3 million in revenue. Most of it was product sales, no paid advertising, because we had the content, right? And it was me, an editor, a writer, an assistant, and a garden assistant / warehouse manager. And that was it. And so to me, that's well past lifestyle. Like, personally, I don't spend millions of dollars a year.
So you're netting a couple $1 million a year personally.
If I wanted to, right?
If you wanted to, you were reinvesting.
It's either that or you invest it, right? But I could have. I could have shut the business down from a reinvestment perspective and taken millions out for sure.
Yeah.
But you got inventory to buy, right? So it's pretty expensive. But anyways, I mean, I would say at that point, I was like, I've built something bigger than I expected it to be in a quicker rate than I expected. And I'm basically slightly in over my head as far as like operating this thing. Because now
you have physical products.
Yeah, physical products, man. Like I had bought a warehouse.
You're not selling online courses.
Yeah, like I can fulfill online courses all day, no sales tax. Like I had to register for sales tax in like almost all 50 states by 2022, And get this, I don't know if you know, but how many sales tax jurisdictions do you think there are in America?
I would guess like 10% above 50, like for like Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico and things like that.
It's like 10,000.
Oh my God.
Because it's state, city, county. And then there's there's one other circle underneath that. So it's just a complete nightmare, dude. It's just
totally. You're not a lifestyle. If you have to deal with, what do you say, 110 jurisdiction?
I don't even know at that. I mean, we were in 40 states, let alone jurisdictions. I have no idea.
If you have to like deal with that shit, it's hard to say you're a lifestyle business unless you're a dedicated person.
Yeah. I don't think so. So I think lifestyle business, frankly, would have been if I never got into products and I just made YouTube videos and blogged and made podcasts and collected basically really high margin revenue off of the media.
Yeah.
And just decided not to grow it further, which is like completely valid decision to do. I know a lot of people who do that. I'm like, awesome. Well done.
Yeah. Why do you think you didn't choose that path?
I think it would have been boring to me.
Okay.
And it would have been
the game.
Yeah, I just would have been like, okay, well, is this all I'm going to do now type thing? And I think the game itself, like we've mentioned, is interesting. So I've been blessed, I guess, in this particular case with loving the craft and loving the game that the craft is in. And so when that runs out, I guess we'll see what happens. But for now, that hasn't happened.
Yeah. Is your relationship with money changing as you were trying to make $2,200 a month and you had a $7 million business, 4 years later? Did your relationship with money change in that period?
It did from a business perspective, for sure, because as you make more, generally your costs are also going up. And, when I made the first buy of inventory, I think I spent like $35,000, which was the most I'd spent on anything in my life. And it was probably like a little under half the money I even had in my life at the time.
Wow.
So I didn't have a ton, right? And that was kind of a scary moment, but it was a business expense. And I forgot who said it, but someone was like on Twitter, someone said like, me staring down a $500,000 PO, no problem, send it, or me like getting asked for extra guac, like, no, I like, so your business relationship to money, I've found, is really sometimes completely divorced from your personal relationship to money. And I wouldn't say I was like super frugal, but I like never bought new clothes. I had a pretty old car. Like I didn't do anything fancy for quite a long time, actually.
Because you didn't care, because you were restraining yourself.
I think I just didn't really care to some degree. And even when I bought the house that I'm in right now, that was 2020. And the whole logic there is I was like, well, if I buy the house, I need more space to grow, and I want more space to like teach people different things. I can't even grow fruit trees, let's say. What if I wanted to do content about that? So I buy the house, and I got it luckily like right before the price run up happened during COVID. But my whole logic, even for buying the house, wasn't like, I definitely want a place to live to call my own. It was like, I'm pretty sure I can earn back the price of this house by just
through the content,
through the content. And it helps more people, because if I can make better videos, like more people will be helped by this. And so I've only recently come around to the idea of like, I'm just going to do this. I know factually, I know I can afford it many times over. I want to do it. And that's the only reason I need to do it. Right.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a foreign feeling to go through that thought process, which is probably like very common for other people.
Yeah. And so do you now, so let's fast forward. So you go out and you raise like PE/VC money.
Yeah, growth equity. Yeah.
You raise growth equity, you get into more manufacturing, and you talk about this in the more business podcast. We had a deal before, like not a lot of business talk.
Not a lot.
And so now you have this like kind of mini, you have this gardening empire, where you are one of the dominant brands in gardening, and you have different products that you're selling. You're in, all these different channels and stuff, e-commerce and traditional retail. Like what, and the business is huge, like 40 million top line, we said. What's the motive? Has the motivating force changed between now and before, like 2021 COVID years?
I would say, yes, it has changed. And it's going to sound weird, especially if you're like an epic gardening fan, you probably think the opposite of what I'm about to say, but I care way less about earning now than I did before. Because before, I was trying to build something that was in the best interest of the customer always. Like I really hold that as the paramount value. I mean, man, even up until 2019, I responded to every comment on every platform 24/7, like every single thing.
I don't doubt you.
And so I really wanted that to be true. But now there's a team, right? There's like a pretty sizable team. I'd be way happier if Jacques on my team was able to make a bunch of money by epic gardening succeeding than me to make more money.
Yeah.
Because my personal utility of money, it's now a game. Like I just I don't personally feel like I need to make some crazy sum. It might happen, but I don't like need it to be complete or something like that. I guess it's that whole idea of like, if you hit your number type thing, do you feel mentally free? I mean, did that happen for you?
So here's the crazy thing is I never really exactly knew what my number was, because it always moves around.
Yeah.
But here's the crazy thing. So when I was on Wall Street, my last 3 years, I made between $1 and $2 million at W-2 income. And then I quit. And these numbers are all transparent because I share them on the podcast. And I basically had like $4.5 million when I quit in like liquid assets, didn't own a home. And then my what I make in RadReads is like last 2 years have been the best years. It's $250,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a 90% decline in income, but you can grow $4.5 million pretty nicely if you're an aggressive investor who uses leverage, as we talked about at the retreat. But here's the thing, and this is why it's psychological. I spend way more money now than I did when I was making $1 million a year.
Why do you think that is?
Because I had this like insane scarcity mindset. Like if I bought something nice, I would either be so scared of using it. Like, for example, like I might buy like a $60 t-shirt.
Yeah.
And I would be too scared to wear it because I wouldn't want it to get worried. So like money had this strange power over me. I also was very interested in like seeing the number always gone up. And basically my number has stayed flat for 10 years, which like is disappointing in some sense because it's like 35 to 45 is kind of peak earning years. But at the same time, I fucking surfed every day for 10 years. Like, so like,
how do you price that in? You know?
Yeah, it's like, I would want money to do that. So to honestly, and we talked about this in the retreat and offline, is like, so much of it are like, I have these like internal wounds about money, and not like nothing bad happened, but like my parents were so scared to spend money that I was so scared to spend money. I have a lot of shame with money. Like I'm like proud that I made that much, but I'm at the same time, I'm like embarrassed that someone's going to point to me and be like, you rich, entitled fuck, like, you know, talking about this and that. Yeah. So it's almost like I can't even win because like I was ashamed when I didn't have a lot of it. And when I had a lot of it, I'm still ashamed in a different way.
I feel that.
And so there's just like this. So I have this weird relationship, but I think a lot of it has to do with these different therapy modalities where, you kind of use your rational brain to kind of heal some of that stuff. Then you get into some of the body stuff, and you start to free. Like, honestly, now I tell you, Kevin, I have this thing where I used to check my net worth like once a quarter or once a month. And for someone who spends more than they earn and who's like levered, you should probably check it.
Yeah.
I have a new game with myself is like, I don't even check anymore.
Yeah.
And, we just spent 15 grand on a trip to Paris, which is like more than we normally spend. But it's still like in the grand scheme of our assets, it's not that much.
You can handle it. Yeah.
Yeah, we can handle it. But I'm like, cool. But normally I would have been like, is this, we flew economy plus. So it was like 8 grand for flights. I'm like, is this worth it? Is this worth it? Like the girls are like being like having a tantrum. Like they're taking away from the value. And then like the whole thing would just consume me that I just wouldn't enjoy spending 8 grand. And I'm finally starting to get to the point. So that was a long-winded way. It's like the number didn't fucking matter. I mean, it mattered to give me the confidence to quit. But then like, in terms of like the way money brings me happiness in my daily life, it had nothing. This is Ramit's point all the time. He's like, he posts these threads from Reddit where he's like, 42 years old, $9 million of net worth, like still struggle to like get the guacamole. It's like money's, a spreadsheet's not going to solve that problem. And so like, I feel really lucky. It took me 9 years beyond the 35 years to like actually be at peace in it. And I'll tell you, when I started sharing my income numbers on YouTube, it was the best fucking thing ever because the number of people that were like, you're so relatable. Before that, we weren't sure if you were like part scammer, part glorifier, part, honest person. And so that we always had our guard up around you.
Like your audience did.
My audience did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because like we all see they're like, oh, I was a Goldman Sachs blah 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 partner, and then like you go look at their LinkedIn and like they had a summer internship at Goldman Sachs, like they're in high school, right? Like their dad's branch of Goldman Sachs, and so I think that broke all of that down. They're like, oh, now we actually trust you, and then there's like we respect that you did so well. A lot of people were surprised that I did that well, and then at the same time there was this relatability because they're like, oh, you're kind of like in the same ballpark of what we have. And so you're super relatable.
Yeah.
Right. And like I tweeted, like my rent's $9,500. Like there are some people in, the middle of America that are like, you're fucking batshit crazy. And then all the people who are in my audience who live in New York, San Francisco, and LA, they're like, oh yeah, mine's 8,500. Like mine's like 10-2, like, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom in Manhattan's 10 grand, 12 grand.
My rent is, it's not rent, but my mortgage plus insurance plus property tax per month is $2,200.
Oh my God.
But I don't live in some super fancy place. I live in a 1,000 square foot home. But no, it's interesting you bring up shame that you weren't doing well, maybe when you were younger, shame that you then figured out how to deal with the other shame, basically is what happened, right? And I'll see that actually. They always say the negative comments hit you harder than the positive, and I think that's definitely true. And then the ones that hit you the hardest where you're like, are they right? Are they actually right about me? And some, I'll see things so often like, oh, he's just all about the money now, this or that. And I'm like, if only you understood how much I'm not. Like, I actually don't really care that much. That being said, it's easy. I understand the perspective. It's like, it's easy to throw that out. And I would probably have said it about myself. And I've probably said it about other creators that I've seen. Oh, that person just cares about money now, or they're so fancy now. It's like, well, another Ramidism that I kind of like is he goes, when someone says like, oh, you've changed now that you've done well in life, you've tried to do well and you succeeded. And then someone will be like, oh, you changed. And it's like, well, like that's the point of why I was trying to get to where I'm at, is to improve and to grow. And I think it's just a very interesting dichotomy, because I still feel like the shame of success, let's call it. I do understand that feeling where I'm like, why me? Or is this okay? Right. Or don't do something too flashy, or don't show it off. Not that I really don't, frankly, but like, but I wouldn't if I did, I guess is the point, Yeah.
Someone told me it's like the reason why you have the shame is because you're the person that you used to make fun of when you were younger. Right? You're like, oh, that rich guy or that entitled, or like this person has it easy. And now you know that someone is basically saying those same things about you because you've said them yourself. So
And you're like, that's not me though.
That's
and
not
then,
me.
You know,
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. And so what, like, I mean, one thing that I wonder is as you've grown your empire, like, do you ever say like, because we're talking about lifestyle business, like the stress and the demands of my freedom are, this is like too much. Do you ever have like a shut it down, like what the fuck's the point of this? Like shut it down moment. And like, how do you?
For sure. I mean, I think every founder would be lying if they said, I literally never thought, what if I wasn't doing this?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure every founder has thought that. And some of them are like too hardcore to admit it. Right.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, I think the things you start to experience when you scale up that I just didn't realize is like, there's a team and teams are made of people and people have issues, right? Or some people do things where you're like, oh, I didn't think I'd have to deal with that in my company, right?
Yeah.
At scale. And then there's just all sorts of things that start to get really annoying that you're like, yeah, I want to make my videos. I want to develop awesome products. I want to figure out how to offer those products to the customer. I do not want to like deal with the fourth weird legalese issue, that comes up.
Like some state thing.
Yeah, just some random thing where you're like, okay, I have to take like half a day to solve this stupid thing that I wouldn't have had to do if I didn't decide to go on this journey, right? And that's where you start going, when you have a week where like 7 of those hit you instead of like the average 2, you're like, okay, like, is this actually, but it's just part of the game, I think, because I think you can never know the counterfactual, which is kind of a Gary Vee-ish thing where he said that before, where he's like, you can't play the other life, so you can't have a regret because you chose one way.
Yeah.
And so I just can't know it. Like maybe I'd just be bored to death if I wasn't doing this.
Yeah. It's funny because I in my coaching practice, I coach a lot of exited founders. And so here's what they do. And this is like the perfect close counterfactual to it is they exit their company, they have like a big payday. And then they're like, I missed the game. And so they try to recreate the game in 2 ways, always the same 2 ways. Angel investing and venture building, like kind of incubating others. So basically it's like you want the joy of the startup struggle without the startup struggle.
Yeah. You want to hack the struggle part of it.
You want to hack it. And it takes them a while to realize it's like they are 2 sides of the same coin. Like you can't have those wins, that deep game satisfaction if you're just writing a check and then going, to cold plunge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like and so that might be a counterfactual to like, yeah, you want to like feel the vibrancy of the experience of battling it out, figuring out this game of business. And like, 7 people are trying to sue you this week, you're like, that's the game. So that's probably the closest counterfactual. But do you ever have a moment where you're like, I'm too rich for this? Meaning not in the sense of like fuck you money, or maybe it might be fuck you money, but more like I don't need money. So why am I dealing with these problems?
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone has their own particular type of problem in a business that I think annoys them more. For me, it's things that are kind of bureaucratic in nature, or like hoop jumping in nature, or like perhaps like dramatic that I feel don't need to be. And I'll be like, yeah, like I did not quote like sign up for this part of it, but I did is the thing. Yeah. Because you sort of de facto sign up for anything that comes after your decision. Right. And so I do have those moments for sure. And then I try to remind myself like, well, you are free to do anything you want. Like theoretically, you could just stop and you'd be disappointing like 90 employees and also your investors. And also like, so there's a lot of reason why you wouldn't, but it's not like you're completely unfree to do it. Yeah. Like you're handcuffed only in a societal way. Yeah. And that's usually enough to keep someone doing something forever. Right. Of course.
Yeah.
And then there's also just ways you can get around it where you're like, look, I could say, hey, look, I actually don't want to be the CEO anymore. Yeah. And that's like a completely fine option to say like, hey, we're at a scale where we should bring in someone who actually has done this before, and I can go do the things I would prefer to do. And that's possible too. But
Last question. So you mentioned kind of this obsessive like way to figure out these games is a strength and a curse. If you play your life out, like let's say like you in 20 years, what do you think your relationship becomes to this obsessive nature?
Hey, I don't know. That's a really good question. Because that's a really good question, because how would it actually play out if you keep sort of mastering and keep scaling? There's really no way out except for endless compounding, right?
Yeah.
And so how do I've started to find ways of finding enjoyment in things that aren't that, right? So like I started carving like little wood figurines, or I'm getting a little bit more into fitness lately, et cetera. But I think I'd have to find something to sink it into, but it probably would be, hopefully at that time, like fully divorced from the need for any of it to make money at all.
Yeah.
Would be ideal. Now, again, like that still might be playing a very big game that allows me to, but I would hope by that point I'd be fully detached from like sort of the need to be addicted to it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I'm excited to see that day. I'm still working on that for
Hey,
myself.
Me too.
Brother Kevin, this has been, I mean, I could talk to you for like 2 more hours and we will. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Tell our listeners and our viewers where they can go learn about you and Epic.
Epic Gardening. Just type that in wherever you want if you want to get into gardening. Otherwise, I think Twitter, probably just my name, Kevin Espiritu on Twitter. Come say hi.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, dude.